Welcome, everybody, to the Real College Life Podcast. We got a banger episode for you today as we head into winter break. We're going to be talking about winter break and some of the challenges that we might face spiritually, personally, emotionally, all that kind of stuff. So I have Seth and Lex here with me today, and I'll ask each of you, just as we start, what has been challenging about your winter breaks in the past?
I can start. For me, winter break was always challenging because I was going home to a place where I didn't have that many friends. Most of my high school friends and I just kind of drifted apart once we got to college. So I was going to a place where, like, nobody was. And my winter breaks are always weird because it was either 2021, so it was still, like, COVID era. Nothing was happening. It was harder to get a job for just a month. I had a class, or I had to go to like a training conference for leading a summer mission, which like interrupted the middle and made it hard to get a job. So my winter breaks are always like, there's nothing I can do consistently for a month. So for me, it was always like going back to a place where I don't know that many people. I have my family, but they have jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of be there for like a month.
Yeah, coming back from winter break, like the first couple of years of college, it was like I had all this community. I was living with people my age, like being immersed in the culture. And then going back home, it's such an opposite like flip of like, oh, I'm just with my family. Like I don't have any friends from high school anymore. And so I was like, oh, it's just like my family, and my family's not Christian. And so going back, it was a very different experience of experiencing like, oh, it's really great Christian community surrounded by other people who think like me. Then going home for break, I'm like, whoa, completely different environment. It's cold, don't really leave the house. Yeah, just really different.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, like a lot of my friends from high school are not Christian. Still pretty close with them, but it's like, it's interesting hanging out with them because I've changed a lot since high school as well. And so they kind of try to, and I'm not gonna lie, I do too, like pick up on the jokes that we had in high school when our brains were half developed. And so it's an interesting time. And as well, I like what you said, is there's just no structure usually to winter break. You know, maybe you've got winter conference halfway through, but I've never had like, oh, I'm working a job every day for break and it's the same thing. It's like, no, I've been building these habits from end of August until now December, and now I got to completely change things up for a month, and then probably going to go back to similar habits once school comes back. So it's always a really weird time for me, and usually a less busy time for me, where I'm kind of forced maybe to face the things that I've been shoving deep down for the semester, or things that I didn't even realize were going on. Maybe kind of come to the surface during winter break. So what might be some particular struggles that students face on winter break?
You go.
Okay. I think one of the bigger ones, I think of isolation is one that is super huge, of like, if you don't have friends from home, or your community looks different, or like if your family is from a different state where you're going back home, like it can look really different and really isolating. I also think too of like, I think seasonal depression is a huge thing in like the cold states. And I just know a lot of students struggle with that, of like low vitamin D, not being outside, and then not even being on campus where there's other people your age to do things. And then you go home and you don't want to leave because it's cold outside. You don't have hobbies you're doing. And so that is, I feel like, a really big struggle.
Yeah. I was going to talk about how winter break feels like a spiritual desert in many ways. Like having my main spiritual community be my parents is very different from having it be like peers and people my own age, or like people in a ministry like crew. So for me, going home was always trying to figure out how to still stay spiritually active in a time where not only do I have less opportunities to get poured into, but I also have significantly less opportunities to pour out. So a lot of times it was like, if I had like a quiet time habit built up, I'd go home and it's like, okay, well, like, what am I doing with this quiet time? how long should it be? Because it's like usually my quiet time is I have this specific time before I head out for work or before I would head out for class when I was a student. And then I get home and it's like, okay, I have nothing. What do I do? When do I do it? Does it matter? Does it feel like it matters? I feel like just all those questions kind of wrapped up in like a spiritual apathy for me over break, where I'd have all this good thing going on. And then I'd come back home and be like, well, if I'm not interacting with anybody, does it even matter?
Right. Yeah, you kind of wait until to just get back to what you're used to, and you're like, I'll just whatever. I'll push this off, and I'll just return to normal life in at the end of January. That's real.
Yeah.
But I know we had an episode probably a month ago about the hidden struggle and sexual purity over break. I know for me, that's always a challenge during break, and like being back home in environments that I've given into temptation or built habits in that realm. I know being back home is always a difficult time. Being in that same environment and remembering kind of the things that have gone down. But another thing too is like screen time is something that I have always struggled with and continue to wrestle with. And it's just so easy to rot for hours over break. And like you said, why does it matter? You know, there's not people around me. I don't have homework to do. So I might as well just sit here at grandma's house when everybody else is napping. You know, it's like it's just so easy to then go unproductive with your time and go backwards in many ways. Maybe if you've been more disciplined about that through the school year, to kind of let your guard down over the break.
Yeah, I find it funny how backwards that sounds, where it's like you have more time, so it's easier to be unproductive with it. When I feel like the lie that we tell ourselves throughout the entire semester is, oh, if I just had more time, I'd be able to do so many things.
Right.
And then we get that more time, and it's like, I'm not doing anything. And it's so consistent.
That's a really, funny dichotomy to point out, too. I think for me, what it's really come down to is like quiet time and time that I'm spending with the Lord. I find that my gauge on that, how well that's going throughout break, whether that's winter or summer break, really dictates how the rest of my experience of break is. If I'm not connecting with the Lord regularly through prayer and through Bible reading and pondering, maybe some deeper thoughts that I haven't had mental space to think of. I know when I have done that over break, I've seen, I've had a more positive experience spiritually, personally, emotionally, from break. But there's a reality that when we experience quiet time, when we experience maybe a little more solitude, a little more silence, all of a sudden we're forced to face the thoughts inside of us, and that's really scary. So I'm wondering, I don't know, if each of you have experienced that, and maybe some tips you have for people as they maybe learn to recognize their own thoughts and their brain and maybe the things that are going on.
Yeah, I think that learning how to be alone with yourself is one of the best skills that you can have. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you always want to spend time around people, or you'd rather be alone. Being able to spend time alone, I think, is one of the best skills that you can develop, because like you said, like, it helps you face the things that you might have been putting off, or that you said, no, I don't want to think about that right now. Like, if I open that can of worms, I'm not going to be able to put it back.
Right.
And I think that, like, times over break, times where I have felt more isolated, even if I'm not actually isolated, I just feel like I am more alone in the world, those have been the times where I've been able to grow a lot more in that area of my life. And just being able to address the questions of, like, what is my purpose? What are the passions that I have?
Wow.
Do I, like, actually, like, want to pursue what I have been pursuing for this long? And that's where I think I've course corrected a lot of the trajectory of my life during those times, where instead of just, put your head down, grin and bear it, just push through to the end and then figure something out, I've been able to make like slight adjustments. That's part of how I ended up here as an intern instead of just doing what my original plan was and going straight into teaching, because I had time while I was student teaching to be able to dwell on that. And that doesn't mean that I dislike the profession of teaching, but I think that it's a lot better that I was here for these 2 years. And having that alone time was a lot better for me to be able to even address those thoughts or contemplate on them instead of just like, I'll figure it out later.
That's so good.
Yeah, I think that's such like a cultural thing too that we've gotten used to, of just like trying to fill our schedule so we don't have to think about those things. And that's an area I struggle with. Like, I think I'm like 95% extroverted and I'm like 5% introverted in me. And so I want to be around people all the time. I want to be doing things all the time. And so learning how to be alone is a really hard skill for me. And then I'm like, if I struggle to be alone, like, how am I being alone with the Lord? Probably not great. And so, like, I remember like 3 or 4 breaks ago, this is really bad brain rot. I watched all the seasons of Lost in 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Which is like 12 hours a day. And so I think that like students can get like swept up in like, oh, like it's over break, but there's 2 ends of like, oh, I'm not spending any time with the Lord. I'm not being alone. I'm like with people all the time. But then there's also that other side of like, I'm just going to sit here and rot and fill my like life up with things that aren't really that great. And so, yeah, I've really had to learn of like, okay, I need an actual schedule of like when I'm spending time with God, because it's so easy to like put myself on the back burner. And I've talked about that with my disciples. I'm like, if you can build strong habits now over break, your habits are going to be so much stronger coming into the semester. And even if you've been pushing it off, like January 1st, make a New Year's resolution, try something over break that's going to like help. But being able to like stick with it throughout break.
That's great. Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point in that sometimes the things that we feel necessary or we feel are best for us in the moment are not the things that like we look back on, as you look back on watching all of Lost over break. Do you feel like that was a productive, like, are you glad you spent your break doing that?
No, I really wish I would have done other things.
Which is interesting, like contrasting from Seth saying that he like got to spend his time over break, like really seeking the Lord, and not to make good and bad examples here, but he really spent a break, seeking out his purpose with the Lord. And I think as each of you are thinking about your winter break, I would encourage you to think about, what is 2 years down the road, like what is that person gonna think of what I did over this break? I know when I'm in quiet and in silence, in solitude, the last thing I want to do is sit down and journal my thoughts. Like I literally fight myself to do that. I'm like, oh, I'll watch a show, or I'll make dinner, or I'll practice guitar. That's still productive. And I just like fight this better thing that I know to be in like sitting down and really working through these thoughts that are in my head. And so I'd encourage each of you as you look at silence, like in the moment, it's not going to feel like this is worth it, but think about yourself, think about your 22-year-old self or your 24-year-old self. That person is going to thank you for the time that you spent really sitting down and intentionally asking God what he might have. I know for me, journaling is always a good practice. Not always fun, not always like the most exciting thing to do on a Tuesday when you have nothing to do, but it's always a time where I'm able to ask myself questions and then like really work through them in a space where I'm not rushed or there's no social pressure from other people. And I also have space and time to ask God and invite God into those thoughts and those journals. So yeah, what are some other helpful tips outside of silence and solitude that have helped you over break, or you've seen help other people over break?
I think we've touched on this a little bit already, but I think structure is, I think I would call it the most important thing, because within structure you can do a lot of different things, but having a semblance of structure is always what has helped me the most. Kind of like Lex said, like having that quiet time, having that like consistent time to do it, whether you do it right as you wake up, you do it like after you eat breakfast, you do it after you shower in the morning, you do it after like you eat lunch. Like if you have a consistent time to do that, I find it the best thing that you can do to like start your day off right. Like I find that days where I start my day off like pretty soon after I wake up with a quiet time tend to be more productive days than when I let myself do whatever for a couple hours before doing a quiet time. So it's like I'm starting with something productive. I am like having to get out of bed, do something, and then that sets me off where it's like, okay, well, I'm already doing stuff, so I might as well go do something else productive. It's like there are times where I've been like cleaning the house, or like I take out the garbage, and it's like, well, I might as well keep cleaning right now. Like I'm already standing up. I'm already trying to be productive. I might as well keep doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like keeping that momentum going, where the worst days I had over break were the days where it's like, I'll just do my quiet time later.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just not do anything productive. I don't think I ever watched Lost for 12 hours a day, but like
Not that bad.
I definitely had some days where I think I did a net zero productive things. And those days don't feel good. Like those are the days where like, you know, you talked about like a year or two me down the line, even like the next day me is like, why did I do that? Like that was bad. I didn't need to do any of that.
Yeah.
So I think getting structure kind of, it sets the trajectory for your day, and I think that is one of the best things. But the hard part about structure is having to fight against all of the habits and structures that you have already built for yourself. Like it took until this September for my parents to move out of the house that I grew up in, which meant that whenever I was going home for break, it was ever since I was a child, what have my habits and like daily patterns been? To the point where like I didn't really have a quiet time until I got to college. Even though I've been a Christian for most of my life, I never had a quiet time until college, which meant that all of my quiet time habits were in my dorm room or in the house that I was renting off campus. None of those were at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go home and I'd just be like, oh, well, what did I usually do when I'm at home? X, Y, and Z. You want to know what's not included in that? Quiet time.
Right.
So I just kind of, like, a couple days after realizing that, I think it was my first or second winter break, I was like, okay, I need to, like, break down everything. Like, just ignore everything that I've done in the past and just, like, I think I actually made a timetable of, like, if I want to regularly wake up at this time, then I want to do this, this, and this for the first couple hours after I wake up. And, like, that's my morning routine. But I needed to build it from scratch because I couldn't just, like, slot it into something. Because otherwise, instead of, like, if I usually, like, wake up, brush my teeth, or, like, wake up, eat breakfast, and then go on to do other things, it's like, well, I can't just slot something in because my body and brain are telling me, well, after you do this, you usually do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't just, like, slot it in because otherwise my brain's going to work against me.
Right. I think if Ryan Nadel was here, he would say, like, along the lines of having a routine and wanting to do something productive, there's, like, an underlying understanding that our days are valuable and, like, our days are numbered. And I think as young people, that's a harder concept to grasp of, like, we just take for granted the fact that we wake up every day and we can breathe and our legs work and our heart beats. And so kind of like you were saying, you know, you could spend a whole day doing net zero productive things. But really what's under that is like a taking for granted of each and every day and a lack of understanding that like you don't have tomorrow promised to you. Mm-hmm. And so you never know, you know, if you could get hit by a car or Jesus comes back or what, you know, like you just, things can change in an instant. So anyways.
Yeah. Have you heard the idea that procrastination is just like the pride that, or like the hubris that God is going to give you another day to do what you should do today?
Yeah.
That's always stuck with me ever since I first heard that, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, procrastination's not just being lazy. There's also like a sense of pride and like overconfidence to it.
Right.
Yeah, I think one thing is you need to like have community where you are and you have to take initiative to have community.
Right. That's
And
huge.
I think people just wait for everyone to come to them and talk to them or FaceTime them over break. But sometimes, a lot of times, we're all busy. And there's other people who are in seasons of busyness and other people who don't over break. And it's okay for you to like take initiative and call your friends, call your community that you have. Go to church, even though you're like over break, it's like, oh, it's only a month and you don't have a home church. Find a church to go to for 4 weeks. Like, get plugged into a small group, go to a young adult a night. Like, find Christian community if you don't have it. Because, like, Seth, you were even saying, like, your parents were like your community. And so it's like, okay, well, how do I also find community, like, outside of that, too, of just, like, people my own age? Like, I mean, during summer, I, like, go to a church in Illinois, and it's only for, like, 2 to 3 months, but it's, like, worth it because I have community and I have people to talk to, and I'm not just isolating myself. And so I think it's super important. Like, the church I go to now over break, I'm not like super invested there, but like on a Sunday, it's really great to go and have like a little bit of community and a little bit of time to talk to. I know like only 2 people there, but I'm still like going and getting spiritually fed instead of just spending time on my own.
Right. I think on the church topic too, winter break is a great time to practice that muscle of, maybe I don't like this word, but I'm going to say it, like church shopping or like looking at things that you like in a church. You know, maybe if you don't have a home church where you're from, that would be a great time to go try different churches, you know, where you don't have friends where you're missing out on, you know, like in Stephen's point, you have friends you go to church with, hopefully, every Sunday. And so winter break's time where you can go to a different church and see, you know, maybe what this denomination worship style is like, or what this Sunday looks like at a different flavor of church than you're used to. I think it's a great time to do that, and a great time to like feel what it feels like to be somebody new to a church. I know that's always eye-opening to me when I go into a church I've never been to before, and I feel anxious and I feel like an outsider, even though I'm like a Christian and I kind of know the things that I've read my Bible. Like, I know some of the things that are going on, but even still, like, there's a new feeling to this, you know, that you don't get on a Thursday night when you come every week. And so it gives me a greater empathy for those who take a huge step of faith to come to church for the first time, or come to Crew for the first time.
Yeah, like you can have that mindset of like, if I'm new to this church, what do I want someone to do to make me feel welcome?
Right.
Yeah.
And then kind of the flip side, something that I'm just realizing now as you're saying this, how often do you show up to church on Sunday and look for new people?
Never.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we should think more about. Because,
Right.
like, especially if you're saying, like, winter break is a good time to, like, help people, like, check out new churches. Maybe winter break should be a time for those of us who have a regular church that we attend to look for the new people that are showing up. Because there could be college students that came to the faith in the middle of the semester, and now they're coming back to your hometown, and they're like, oh, this church seems good.
Church shopping, yeah.
Church shopping.
Yeah.
It might be the time to do that, and that's something that I don't think I've ever really thought about before.
Yeah.
Because we talk a lot about, like, looking for new people on Thursday nights at our crew meetings, but I don't know if I've ever brought that energy back to the church that I attend.
Yeah. I really want to hammer on another thing that Lex said about community over break. I think this time of year, we're in finals week right now in Stevens Point, and this time of year there's a lot of buzz of like, oh, we're going to have a Bible study, and we're going to meet once a week over break, and we're going to FaceTime, and all those things. And I love that energy. I love that passion and that drive. But as somebody who's participating in those conversations, I would encourage you to maybe be a little cynical and say, these things aren't going to happen if I don't start it. You can't just assume that somebody's going to, like, you know, if there's buzz about Bible study, oh, this person talked about it, so he'll do it or she'll do it. Like, if I were you and you want this community, I would take that burden on yourself and say, like, I'm going to be the one reaching out. I'm going to be the one setting this up, because chances are, in my experience, unfortunately, nobody does set that up. And so you kind of do have to be the one even though it's not fun, even though there's other people who are interested, like you just kind of have to take that responsibility on yourself.
Yeah.
Another tip that I would have for break is to find something maybe that you can study more, or something that you really want to dig into or really want to seek the Lord in over break, whether that's your purpose, or if there's maybe a topic that you don't feel equipped in. Winter break is a great time to read those books of the Bible, or find a book outside of the Bible to study. Really use that time. We say throughout break, if only I had more time to study baptism, or to study early church history, or whatever it might be. This is your time to do that, and to learn a ton. Hopefully you won't be interrupted by class or homework or due dates. And so I really encourage you to have a plan and have a direction as you go into break.
That was one thing this summer, as I was not on campus, but I had time, and I was I'm going to challenge myself to read the Bible in 90 days. And that was my challenge to myself.
Whoa.
And I finished it in 99. So I was close, but
That's a lot faster than most people.
I know. But for me, I've always struggled with January 1st, I'm going to do the Bible in a year plan. And then I miss a day. And I'm oh no, I'll catch up the next day. And then it gets more and more. And then I get discouraged, and then I don't bring my Bible at all. And so my tip also is if you're going to make a plan, it's great and it's fun. But God wants your quality, not your quantity. And if you're going to be well, now I can't do this reading plan because I made it and I'm behind by a week, and then you never get to your Bible, it's okay that you missed, but then it's how are you going to now spend time with God again? And so that was always discouraging for me, because I'm okay, I have a structure and plan, and then I mess up that structure, and then I the whole plan goes out the window instead of being no, it's okay that I missed a day and I messed up, but now I'm just gonna just be a day behind, and it's okay not to have a strict schedule like that.
Yeah, it's the classic New Year's resolution problem. Gym memberships spike in January and drop to an all-time low in February.
Yes.
Maybe we should drop an episode about New Year's resolutions.
Ooh.
That'd be fun. Okay, moving on. One other aspect of winter break that is difficult for a lot of people is being around non-Christians, whether that be your family or your friends. So how can we help our students navigate that kind of different waters from maybe what they've been experiencing throughout the semester?
Yeah, I've had this experience. So I accepted Christ when I was 17, but I really did not know what it meant to walk with the Holy Spirit and walk in my relationship with God until I was 21, junior in college, junior in college, actually taking my faith seriously. And by the time it was my senior year, I actually was okay, I'm gonna lock in and really I joined the leadership team with crew at Whitewater, actually locked in. And through that, having conversations with my family had just become more awkward. And I think it's because it's living in the world versus living of the world. And I'm living with these non-Christians and having these conversations. And I'm yeah, this is great, whatever. And then I became a Christian, got really into my faith. And then I'm what do I talk about? Because my Christian community and crew and church, it's a majority of my life. It's
Right.
the center of my life. So how do I explain that to someone who that's not their center of their life and they don't understand it? It's trying to have a conversation with someone, we talk about math when we're younger, right? Oh, you're building up skills, addition, subtraction, and eventually get to calculus. And I felt I was talking to someone oh, I'm trying to teach you calculus when you don't even know basic addition. You don't even know the foundations of Christianity, and I'm trying to talk to you about all these spiritual things. And so for me, that was really hard. I've also had a lot of rejection of oh, I'm going on this mission trip and talking about all these things. It's wow, it's cool that you get to travel the world in your job. And that was the response. And I'm you get it, but you don't get it. It's cool. It's cool, but that's not the meat of it. And so having those conversations with family is just really hard over break, because I'm I feel more and more disconnected But like even this past Thanksgiving, I was like, wow, like actually I'm like finding other things like to connect with and like slowly have those conversations instead of being at home and being like, I did all these things, crew, and this, where it could be like really overwhelming versus like I need to back up and talk to someone that like doesn't even know Jesus, doesn't even understand like the basic gospel, and start with like the basics of having those conversations.
Right. That's so good. I know I have some friends from high school, like I mentioned earlier, that are not Christian. And so when I first made my decision for Christ, I did that over winter break my sophomore year. And then this is during spring break. But during spring break, I made it my mission to meet with, I have 4 friends from high school. One of them's a Christian, so I met with him first, but I met with each of my friends and I told them about my faith. And I said, hey, I've committed myself to Jesus and I'm going to be living this way. And, things might be different. I might not participate in the same jokes and I might not, in the same behaviors, but, and obviously tried to open the door to explain the gospel to them through that and open the door for questions, which I don't know what I was doing. I didn't know that much. But thankfully the Holy Spirit guided me, through that whole process and through each of those lunches I had with my friends. But, I would really encourage you, if God puts that on your heart, and I would hope that he would, that if you do have friends from home and maybe you're newer to the faith or you just started taking your faith more seriously, to meet with those friends and say, hey, I've given my life to Christ and I really want to follow him and I want you to know him.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to know God but I want to respect you and where you're at. I know each of my friends had very different experiences with going to private school or being from a completely different country. And so having grace, but also saying like, hey, this has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so I want this for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to want it. I'm not going to force this on you, but as your friend, like I love you. And this is an amazing thing that's happened to me. And I think too, even growing up in a Christian household, there's a lot of excitement for our faith in Crew and for sharing our faith in Crew. And that, in my family was not super normal. We went to church. My dad wasn't like, my parents weren't like shy about their faith, but Crew is just very out there, like very out there compared to maybe what I experienced growing up. And so part of that, like coming home and talking about, oh, I'm discipling somebody, like, what does that mean? Like, you are only a year older. How are you mentoring somebody in their faith? Just sharing those things and trying to learn how to like stand firm on what you're doing and how it's been impactful for you and how it's impacted a lot of other people, even though they might not understand it. Not to poo on my parents. They've loved me and accepted me, and but I've also seen them grow a lot from the experiences that I've had mentoring other people, and my dad talking about how he wants to disciple somebody in his workplace now. And like,
so cool.
I want to encourage the students here, like if your life has been changed by Christ and if you've gained a new fire, a new excitement for the Lord through Crew, like that'll rub off on your parents. Like they will see that in you. And whether or not you see that right away in them or they accept that right away, like they love you and they hopefully watch your life pretty closely and see the things that you care about and see the things that you love. And so, even if you're not super forward and super outward about it when you're at home, just sharing legitimately what's going on in your life. Like you said, my whole life is Crew. My whole life is Bible study. I can't not talk about this because I really don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah.
Because it, for better or worse, absorbs most of my time.
Yeah.
And it is for better. But I think being unapologetic about that is super helpful. I know I tend to want to like shy away from that because I'm not sure if people will approve that in my life or if they agree with how outward crew is about their faith and wanting other people to know Christ. And I've found that if I'm gracefully unapologetic about my faith, not arrogant, not boastful, but this is what my life is. I found that does have an influence on those around me.
Yeah. And I think too of like when we become a Christian, we kind of just like, we understand the gospel and we have this fire. And so we're like, well, everyone's going to react the exact same way. And it's like not true. Like there is going to be a lot of discouragement if you know people aren't Christian. And like not everyone is like excited as you are to hear about the gospel. And like that's just like a grain of salt of like it can be discouragement. And like for me, when I came back, like in like high school and like senior year, when I started actually getting a little involved in the church, like my parents were like, you're in a cult. You are like not doing the right things. Like you are like, you should not be like, yeah, this is like, I would get like grounded from going to church and like just really just like, no. And now like seeing that over, this is like years, a span of like 8 years of seeing like this growth. And now like my mom is like now a Christian. Like I'm not saying that happens with everyone, but like it takes time. Like it's not going to be this instantaneous like thing that, oh my gosh, like they're going to get it. Like it could just take a really long time, and that's okay too. And like when you feel discouraged, like lean on the Lord and pray for like your family. Like I think that is like one of the biggest things of like when I looked back in my journal of like how many times I felt discouraged and just like frustrated, but then how much time I've like lent into the Lord. And I'm like, yeah, because I like needed that, because I needed strength to like process through that and just to like see like the life change now that's like starting to happen.
Yeah. If you are somebody who's feeling like, oh, that's so cliche, like just pray for your family, pray, like I can relate to that 100%. Like I can't tell you how many times people have been like, you need to pray, prayer is powerful. And I've been like, yeah, whatever, I know that. Yeah. But like I'm serious, the Holy Spirit has grown that in me a ton this year of like, you need to pray, you need to like ask God to work, because he does show up. And it's cool to ask God for something and then he shows up in that, and to be like, oh, I was kind of involved in that a little bit, like asking God for that, and to be able to celebrate with God and the cool things he does in people's hearts. So pray urgently over break, whether that be for people you want to reach in your classrooms in the spring, or for friends from home, or for family, or for strength to be able to sustain your spiritual habits, to resist temptation, all that good stuff. So thank you, Seth and Lex, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great podcast. Hopefully you all thought this was helpful, and we hope you have a great winter break. Thanks for tuning in.